Hello and welcome to The World This Week with me, Gavin Lee. Halloween edition this week, so stay tuned for news on mummies at the museum at the end. But for now, I'm joined by four distinguished international correspondents who'll be looking over the significant global events of the past 7 days with me. And it's been a week that Britain's king took away his brother's title in an astonishing press release. Andrew, the royal formerly known as the Prince, will also lose his 32-roomed mansion at Windsor after being served a formal notice to vacate, being downgraded instead to the lodgings at the Royal Sandringham estate at King Charles's expense. It comes days after the posthumous release of a memoir by Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent victims of Jeffrey Epstein's, detailing her accounts of being trafficked by him, made to have sex with him 3 times. Well, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor denies the allegations. It was a week billed as a press political clash of the titans. The meeting between the two, the first time in 6 years. Global markets rattled by the stop-start tariff wars. Beijing restricting the exports of the essential rare earth minerals it has control of. After a 100-minute meeting in South Korea, President Trump described it as outstanding. Analysts said it's sketchy and temporary, a tactical pause. We'll look at the wider implications.
It was an outstanding group of decisions, I think, that was made. A lot of decisions were made. Well, I guess on the scale from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was at 12.
It's been a week that's seen horrific violence in Sudan, door-to-door merciless killings of unarmed civilians, claims of ethnic cleansing as soldiers of the paramilitary group the Rapid Support Force captured El-Fasher after a 500-day siege. It was the last city in Darfur under the control of the rival Sudanese armed forces, and now effectively partitions the country. We can look at who can stop the war.
Can anyone here say that we did not know this was coming? We cannot hear the screams, but as we sit here today, the horror is continuing. Women and girls are being raped, people mutilated and killed with utter impunity.
It's been a week that's seen a catastrophic hurricane rip across the Caribbean. Jamaica's Prime Minister warned of a Category 5 storm of the century. At least 19 people were killed. 90% of the buildings in the west of the country estimated to have been badly damaged, with the true extent still emerging. And catastrophic flooding too in Cuba and Haiti.
This hurricane has really devastated us, not only from the tourism aspect of it, but every livelihood that you can think of has been severely disrupted. The fishermen, oh boy, I don't know how they're going to manage. I don't know how any of us are going to manage, how we're going to recuperate from this.
It is time to meet tonight's trick-or-treaters. Let's introduce the panel. We're joined by Emma Kate Simmons, the Paris-based writer and editor of Frank Tireur magazine, columnist at New World magazine too. Evening, Emma Kate.
Good evening.
Friend of the programme, and I'm glad you're here this week because back in 2017, you did one of the most nuanced, detailed accounts I've seen of the behind-the-scenes of Brigitte Macron, her effect on the president during the election campaign. Back this week, we've seen 10 people in court, this cyberbullying trial against her. We've seen also her daughter in court talking about the impact of her mother. What have you made of this case? And then bringing it.
Well, it's the latest there's a series of cases that have been brought by the Macron couple, and this is the 10 French conspiracy theorists who have been tracking Brigitte Macron, some of them for more than 5 years, claiming falsely that she's a man, that she's in fact her brother, that she may be the father of Emmanuel Macron. Nothing is factual, nothing makes sense. They're all in court, absolutely persisting with the lunacy that Brigitte Macron is a man or a transgender, insisting that they're absolutely right and giving more fuel to the fire across the Atlantic, where Candace Owens, a hateful conspiracy theorist, and we've written a lot about this at Conspiracy Watch, where I work on the global side with Rudy Reichstadt. Candace Owens is also being sued by the Macrons over in the US, but she started with the French side. The French conspiracy theorists sold her their fake theories, and they're comparing themselves to Flaubert and saying that they've invented characters like Madame Emma Bovary. It's absurd, but it's slander, and it's extremely dangerous for democracy.
And Candace Owens has been making millions out of YouTube, her YouTube account, a very successful career as a result of those slanderous allegations. Let's also bring in Caroline Deer, the Paris correspondent for ARD, the German network, contributor to Deutsche Welle as well. Thank you for being with us tonight. I know, given what Emma Kate has just been saying, you've been following this case very closely for ARD this week.
I think think it's an important trial as well, but it also shows how hard and how difficult it can be to file lawsuits in those cases, because you have to know that 2 of the conspiracy theorists that had been in court this week had already been convicted last year in another trial, but then been acquitted in the appeal, and they now have to go to court before court again, but for another reproach. So this time it was cyber harassment. Last time it was defamation, and the court in last year said defamation is not the case. We cannot actually say that this was a case of defamation. So this shows how really hard it is to get those rumors to die down. But the Macrons tried, and I think it's important that they try, even if you could argue that every time you talk about it again, it only gives them a case of resonance.
To which point, pretty much, the spouse of kings and queens and prime ministers and presidents over the years, go back to Marie Antoinette, have suffered the slings and arrows of insults. And there are questions, aren't there, sort of counter to that, suggesting, is it a good idea to be chasing this? Can they really quash it? Or are they giving fuel to the fire of rumours? Exactly.
I think... Of course, it does bring up those rumors again if you talk about them. But then again, in my opinion, you cannot accept that those people can actually say on the internet whatever they want and nobody ever does anything about it. And secondly, the Macrons also argue that because Brigitte Macron is being asked about those rumors every time she goes abroad and meets representatives of other countries, they argue it's also a question of France's safety and reputation as a state. And so this is also why they have decided to actually bring this before court, and not only in France, but also in the US.
Great to have you with us, Caroline, Emma Kate as well. Let's move to Cyril Payen, senior international reporter at France 24, former correspondent in Bangkok, in Jerusalem. Evening to you, Cyril. One thing we should talk about is your quest, a number of other correspondents as well, trying to do the same, to report from Gaza. There's been brief embeds, but now we're in the ceasefire. Is there any sign of that happening?
Well, and as we speak, I've been talking with our correspondent, Rami Abu Jamous, which is in northern Gaza. The Israeli tanks are just moving again, despite the ceasefire. So for my career, I've been 30 years, trying to sneak in places, covering wars, and this is a very huge sense of frustrations because there's been now more than 2 years and no way we have been trying tunnels, the maritime way to get in Gaza. Everything has been tried and we have no access. And it's a really key question about what's going on. For instance, we have a ceasefire, as you said, but we are observing a kind of a way of the Israeli army is handling the Lebanese ceasefire. I mean, you have a ceasefire, but Lebanon, southern Lebanon especially, is bombarded every day. I was there during the start of the offensive 1 year ago. And we look at the same strategy apparently in Gaza. And despite the big no from the United States saying you have to move on now with the next steps. And so it's quite worrisome. And again, without any witness, we don't have even the luxury to do conspiracy theory. This is actually really something extremely bad, which is actually happening on the ground. And it will last for memories. And I wonder, as for myself, what I will tell to my children one day.
Now, the constant refrain from Israel is that it's not safe enough, that the journalists could be murdered by Hamas. There's been brief hour-long, 2 hour-longs, half-a-day embeds where they give journalists brief access. From your point of view, you're not interested?
Not at all. There won't be any. I was based 4 years in this region. I know Gaza, and there is no reason why we should be embedded only. And there is a choice when you choose to have some people embedded. It's like the NGOs now coming in. It looks like very much they under the influence of the Trump administration. They won't be the usual NGO who used to work on the ground in Gaza in the near future, but more evangelist NGO chosen by Washington and also by Israel. So this is something which is quite dystopic, and this is very, very sadly the reality. And again, we are not here to have independent eyes. And I just remind that 240 local journalists have been killed in Gaza in 2 years.
It is an astonishing figure, and great to have you with us as well, Cyril Payen, as well tonight. Also completing our lineup later in the programme when we talk about the Andrew, formerly Prince scandal. We'll go across the channel and speak to the writer and broadcaster Stephen Bates, the former royal correspondent at The Guardian as well, to understand the extent of what is going on in the UK right now. We will begin with the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world right now, according to the UN. The war in Sudan, the situation in the city of El-Fasher in Darfur under siege for 500 days. It was just gone midday, local time, Sunday, when the first reports came out of the city. The RSF, the Rapid Support Force, the paramilitary militia, seized the army headquarters of the rival Sudanese armed forces in the city, its last stronghold in Darfur. The forces, known as the SAFs, withdrew from El-Fasher without any official comments that day. By evening, the RSF declared full control. 26,000 civilians were then reported to have fled. And for those who couldn't, evidence quickly emerged of horrific violence, torture, door-to-door targeted killings of men, women, children murdered as they tried to flee. Verified footage too grim to show, filmed by RSF soldiers themselves as they carried out the acts. And journalists can't get in or access to Darfur. Jonathan Rugman at Channel 4 News reported on the videos coming out of El-Fasher, filmed by the RSF.
Back in Darfur, Dagalo's fighters are now holding hundreds of prisoners at gunpoint. They're all criminals, says the man in charge.
Well, the man in charge, General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, Hemeti as he's known, the group's leader, has admitted to, quote, violations, says he's ordered an investigation. The country is now effectively partitions. SAF control the east, the RSF to the west, and neither of the two belligerents are waging war with their own resources, each backed by an external patron. And evidence shows the RSF has the UAE behind it, who are providing armed support and drones, getting access to vast gold reserves in return, despite denials from Doha. The Sudanese armed forces are supported by Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, though to a lesser extent. Cyril, let's begin with you. What you've made of developments this week, the echoes of Darfur 20 years ago.
Very much so, and also to do the parallel with Gaza, because really we're talking about the dark hole. This is a place where you can't go, you can't report. Darfur is a place which is led to extreme brutality and violent adjustment. And to come back to what the Rapid Support Forces are claiming, to judge, to arrest some perpetrators, it's a public stunt. They have been doing that and on for a long time. The real problem, and it reflects the strength of the international community. What can we do to put some pressure on these people who are in the command of this proxy war? Because we're talking about the proxy war again, with a variety of supporting countries with different reasons. I've been seeing these people in Yemen during the 2015 war, and it comes to the support now by the allegiance, the old allegiance between the Emiratis forces and the Rapid Support Forces who fought in Yemen. So it's back to a long time ago, and it looks like it's going on circles, and it's a dark hole. But without a proper international community pressure, more than the statement, the very strong statement, and the extremely dedicated from the UN, we could hear this gentleman, it's powerless. And this again is a dark hole of news, and it's a tragedy which is going to spread also in this extremely difficult and volatile region.
Very interesting point that Cyril raised, Emma-Kate, which is the fact that there seems to be, we heard from General Hemeti, the RSF chief, saying that there's been this investigation into violations. There have been a number of arrests of its soldiers over these abuses. Now, a number of international humanitarian law experts saying this is a playbook. It's a rhetorical strategy to legitimise essentially framing war crimes as mistakes during operations.
No, but I mean, I think today you can see, for example, Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times we're seeing again atrocities in Darfur, and the world is letting it happen. So both the Trump and the Biden administration spoke about a potential or a genocide occurring here, but haven't been willing to put the sufficient pressure diplomatically on the United Arab Emirates, who are arming these probably genocidal forces. And there's a complete ethnic element in here of Arab forces, nationalist forces who are being funded by UAE and who are attacking black African tribes. I mean, there's evidence of them lining up all the black men in a village and shooting them all, attacking this maternity this week. So, I mean, I think that it's true to talk about Gaza, the UN does that, but there's been such a focus on Gaza, actually, conspiracy, and this has been coming. It's been happening for the past couple of years again, and yet what has the international community been doing? And now, fortunately, there's a focus on it, but is it too late? Is it too late when we see these images and these figures and literally the satellite images of the blood? And this has happened 2 decades ago.
And to which we heard from Tom Fletcher, the UN Humanitarian chief, saying it's not like it came out of the blue. This is a 500-day siege. And Carolyn, tell me about what you're hearing coming from Berlin, Paris, Brussels in relation to this situation.
Actually, from Berlin, you don't hear all that much, which I find is a crying shame. Actually, I was pretty ashamed of myself today, I have to admit, when I saw that in 2024, I was covering the Sudan support conference, which took place in Paris, and I had completely forgotten about it. This conflict has been going on since 2023, and the world is just not looking there. But I think the problem, Cyril has mentioned it, and McKay has mentioned it, there's a lot of countries that are supporting the militias, the conflict parties. But then again, the pressure is not there because, in my opinion, those countries who are taking part are strategic partners for Western forces in other subjects. And I think this is why probably a lot of countries shy away from applying the necessary pressure on the countries that are actually supporting sides that are perpetrating war crimes and crimes against humanity in Sudan.
And it's a very good point, Cyril, because if we look at what maybe the hope, like we've seen in other conflicts, whether it's 8 wars is sorted or not, yet to be verified what President Trump claims, but it is the US that have rounded together the so-called Quad, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt and the US. They've been meeting in Washington for talks. There's been images of Hamdan Dagalo, the RSF leader's brother, the weapons sort of specialist and chief selector of weapons inside this meetings, but they allegedly recently walked out, according to US sources, because they wouldn't freeze the conflict where it was. This was before El-Fasher. What are you making of the chances of that being successful?
Well, you know, the art of the deal from the Trump administration sees its limits, its limitations, because this conflict has been going on since for a few years now, involving so many parties, so many. There is the goal also. There is the money involved in this matter. So many violations of the embargoes. I'm talking about precisely about the weapon embargoes, implicating the UAE sending weapons through all the tarmac they can find in airfield they can find all around this region to send some weaponry to these very people, and especially drones now. That it can't be by snapping your finger that you're going to get a deal, whether Mr. Trump likes it or not. You know, this is not a short-term vision in terms of strategy and diplomacy that you can have with these people. So I'm not surprised. And you have too many people involved, so many people involved who have been let violating embargoes, because not only UAE, but so many in the dark people who are just behind the scenes, and just maneuvering and not having any care for these thousands of people displaced, thousands of people killed for so many years. So it's really worrisome what's going on there.
Very interesting today, Emma Kate, I heard from Martin Griffiths, the former humanitarian chief at the UN, saying that what he's not hearing at the United Nations Security Council is what he'd like to see, which is the RSF, given what's happened and what happened 20 years ago in its other form, the Janjaweed in Darfur, should be proscribed as a terrorist organisation. But here's the rub, he said, if you do that now, the chances of a ceasefire are nil.
Well, that may be the case, but and also there's connections with the Muslim Brotherhood. And then I would also note that the International Criminal Court has not indicted anyone for what's going on in Darfur, and yet obviously, and the ICJ, very focused on Gaza, and also the news focus has been so almost sort of unitary on this one conflict, but there's so many conflicts going on in the world. This is not the only one. And why haven't there been indictments here? I mean, it's not a recent conflict. So I think obviously it's not just the Trump administration or the Europeans putting pressure on the parties who are arming these potentially or perhaps actually genocidal forces. It's also up to the bodies and organisms of international law to step in.
If we go back, Cyril, because you've covered this from afar, or as close as you could be, for a long time, and we go back to the former president who was ousted by these two men, General Burhan of the Sudanese Armed Forces, General Hemeti of the RSF. They used to work together, they were close together. just talk us through that kind of potted history of how it all fell apart when we were, a few years ago, so hopeful that there was a civilian kind of uprising.
Very much, yeah.
Such hope that things could be democratic.
Right. There were lots of hope, and from this region with this popular uprising, but we come back to the very clinic and the very roots of this region also, and this is maybe also the responsibility of what we have done in these parts of the world in terms of decolonizing, putting borders where they were not supposed to have borders. We see that in the Middle East everywhere, and in Africa too. It comes to clinic war, because this is all what is about between the two factions. They were, as you said, they were working together, they were allied, and then like this, it went back to fighting, and it's again a country where the hope just vanished like this, and it's quite sad indeed.
Sorry to interrupt, but the part of the problem was that General Hemeti wasn't going to be subordinate to Mr.
He didn't want to be, of course, because the minority represents has been always not down. I would say being a bit lower class than the one in the power. So it comes to a clinic kind of a revenge, but with a sense of brutality which is beyond expectation. And this is also our borders have been extremely and technically quite superficial, artificial, I would say, because it doesn't represent the people. And also we have questions to be asked to ourselves too, what we have done in this part of the world. But as you said, it's too late anyway. So for the people on the ground.
Well, yeah, but it's it's a new form of colonization when you've got sort of Arab nationalist forces being funded and armed by the United Arab Emirates attacking black African tribes. So I think it's too simplistic to sort of talk about past colonialism as the only This is a new form of colonialism, which is potentially or perhaps genocidal.
Yeah, that is ongoing.
And ethnically based and ongoing, yes.
Well, let's move from events in Sudan to Busan, South Korea's second largest city, 11 o'clock Thursday morning there. Much publicised President Trump, President Xi showdown, a first face-to-face in 6 years. This time the intent was to settle a trade dispute, or at least stop it spiralling. 1 hour, 40-minute meeting was timed to fit in with US President's closing leg of his Far East tour. He'd already talked up landmark wins in Malaysia, Japan, South Korea, securing billions in investments, reducing trade barriers for American company by leveraging his tariff threats, although demonstrators in South Korea made clear his negotiating tools were seen by some as below-the-belt blackmail tactics for allies.
We came to this rally because we believe Trump's demands are excessively exploitative. We think what he's asking for is too much.
Well, the denouement between Trump and Xi pitted the America First agenda against the Chinese dream, the mantra of the Communist Party since 2012, both aimed at restoring or reclaiming their nation's greatness. Both locked horns on trade, though diplomatic pleasantries prevailed.
The President of the People's Republic of China.
Good to meet you. Great pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you again.
To see you again. And afterwards, President Trump said it was amazing, a win for both sides, to coin the phrase bigly. The Economist headline said America and China have only holstered their trade weapons. Neither country wants decoupling or confrontation, at least not yet. Emma, Kate, a superpower struggle for dominance. To what extent have these long-time frenemies patched it up?
Well, they've patched it up, but it's Trump who's coming out probably not on the front foot because he's under pressure at home because his soybean farmers can't sell a thing to the Chinese. The tariffs are not going down well on the population. They're having a real impact on the economy. In fact, only yesterday in the Senate, Republican senators voted against his capacity to impose tariffs willy-nilly, as he's been doing. And I was looking at the Council of Foreign Relations, and they said actually China was the unexpected winner from this first meeting in 6 years because he's brought the tariff on China down to 20%, reciprocal and fentanyl, and that's a big win. It's the same level as in Southeast Asia. So Trump's sort of painting this as fantastic, 12 out of 10, but in fact, it's the Chinese have sort of got what they wanted. So I think he's in trouble on the domestic front, and I think he's very good at marketing it. But you have to look at the figures, and you can see the smile on Xi's face there. Apparently, they shared a joke about how it would be too cold for Trump to come in January to Beijing, and that was what the lot, but I'd like to know what Trump was holding up in the pictures that the White House revealed, and she's there laughing and guffawing behind. So a lot of showmanship, but look at the figures.
A lot of showmanship, and a lot of people, I'm sure you remember these images from 2014 when President Xi is having a pint with David Cameron at a pub in the UK when it all seemed like a new dawn, which wasn't to be. Look at the spy allegations going on in the UK right now. Emma Kate talks about President Trump saying 12 out of 10. It couldn't have gone better. Carolyn, how would you score it?
Actually, my impression is that the trade war has been put on pause, but I wouldn't give it too much of. I mean, not that it's not important, but I wouldn't give too much for it to last very long. What I found interesting, of course, you could hear a lot of relief from Brussels, because for the European Union, of course, who also has important trade negotiations coming up with China, this is seen as a very important and a good sign. But it also showed how very, very dependent the EU is from China, especially when it comes to rare earths and critical raw materials. And I think this should be seen as another call for more European autonomy, which we have been talking about for very, very long, and nobody really has an idea how to actually put that in place. But I think this is another sign of, to incite us to take action.
Well, the question is whether it's too little, too late, and what can be done now, Cyril, because the point that Carolyn raises probably in the background, a lot of fear recently struck up by China's retaliation. Suddenly export controls on its 17 rare earth minerals, a concern for Europe because, let's face it, the utter dominance of that market could actually see Western militaries, according to analysts, come to a standstill.
Absolutely. But this is interesting also to watch the aftershock of this diplomatic stunt we have been experiencing today in Kuala Lumpur. The Chinese Ministry of Defense, Dong Jun, stated with his homologue, this counterpart, the Peter X, said that they were in full confidence between the two countries, that they tried to manage this stunt ordered by Donald Trump. And I will call more than a deal or a peace he was trying to get with Xi Jinping. He got just a ceasefire, I would say. And this is for now, for it will implicate not more than that, even if it gives he rate 12 out of 10, of course. But it's a ceasefire, and he really experienced for his second mandate, the strength of his counterpart, Xi Jinping, who was already there too at this time, at this first mandate, the strength of China now. What is interesting also, and when I've been talking to friends in Taiwan, is that not addressing at all the fact that in the maybe coming future, 2-3 years, say, that the Chinese army will cross the Formosa Strait to get in Taiwan. It's a way to show that you have been very weak in the negotiation with the Chinese. So it's a ceasefire. It's temporary. But by the way, you know, we get used to that now with a few months back in power by Donald Trump. But China really made a very, very big point there. And even the body language was very interesting between Xi and Trump. The two gentlemen know themselves. It's not because Xi Jinping invited Donald Trump in Beijing that it means that they're friends. They were not friends. It was not very friendly. And even the eye contact, Trump was trying to get this thing by being this deal man, the guy.
Connection.
You see what I mean? And this is not in the Chinese culture at all, but the body language from Xi Jinping, when he comes to the Elysee Palace, is the same. You have a cohort of people who are from the EU, the French, trying to get negotiating with him, being very friendly, with all the honor of and the pomp of the French Elysee, and you have this marble statue of Xi Jinping, which is a new emperor. He's a red emperor. He's nothing out of this, you know. And so, militarily speaking, I will be a bit more worried than this very short-term deal we had. So I will call that a ceasefire. Whether it's good for a few months, it will be okay. But it's just on the ceasefire.
Just to briefly underline what Cyril just said, you could at least read in the German press that there was no written contract or whatever. They never agreed on anything and signed it afterwards. So this is just to say how fragile
and how open for interpretation it is.
Exactly.
And what President Trump is effectively king at, which is putting out the narrative that becomes the narrative by setting it. And to what Cyril just talked about as well, to understand the extent or not of press freedom in China, you only have to attend a press conference in Paris or Brussels or Berlin. I'm sure you've experienced that, Carolyn. You're lucky to get one question to the Chinese, and it's already pre-planned. It doesn't come from you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything about how it works in China, but it's true that in press conferences, official press conferences, even if there's representatives of the German and the French government, you also have to actually talk with your colleagues before there's a certain number of questions which are allowed, and you have to tell them. You have to tell them before, but there's people going around collecting, okay, who is asking what, and it's not that you get to ask any question that you would like to ask. That's true.
Or you would, yes. Or there's an answer to that is useful. Emma Kate, the other points that Cyril touched upon, as well as the rare earth minerals, it's the quid pro quo to that. There is some concern about President Trump saying that he's opening up conversations with the AI chip maker NVIDIA, to which this is seen as a potential US national security concern. Could it speed up China's advancement by its scientific know-how of what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I read about that, but I think it was once again like more discussion. There were no actual undertakings on either side. And the other issue that we didn't talk about yet was that, of course, Trump was there to do a deal, which is to push for the finalization of TikTok to be taken over by not a cabal, but a group of US investors, including those very close ideologically to Donald Trump, and perhaps his son Barron might be on the board. So I saw that the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said after the meetings that they got very close to having the permissions for the TikTok takeover to go forward. And that's speaking to disinformation. We had a lot of disinformation extremely coming out of China on TikTok, but now it's going to be taken over by a kind of a MAGA consortium. Are we going to have like a different version, but still disinformation? Highly likely.
And the Murdochs highly likely to be on that as well, Lachlan and Rupert.
There'll be Murdochs, I think, is there Mark Andreessen, the Ellisons. There's a whole group involved, but the Trumps, the people around the Trumps are also closely involved. So is it going to be like a state-owned media almost?
There are so many elements of this which President Trump came in saying he would sort out with tariffs. Fentanyl, we haven't mentioned that. There's no the sign that a source of the mixing of fentanyl coming from Beijing and via Mexico into the US. That's still an open question mark. The other thing we haven't talked about, I guess because it didn't really come out, is Ukraine. The conversations that were coming from the MAGA movement about how the US was going to push China to stop being the decisive enabler of Russia. Was there any news there, Cyril?
Nothing. I mean, we were not in the room, but nothing. But this is also what we have in the new sense of geopolitics. You are on the table for one day. You are not in the same day. Volodymyr Zelensky knows it very well. This is why he wants some quicker response. But also, just to sum up what has been this meeting, I think I will say I'm not an American politics expert, but I will say for the first time in diplomacy, Donald Trump, new version, is in the second mandate, didn't have some key world leaders trying to cuddle him, to be very nice with him. He just had Xi Jinping standing in front of him, say yes, no, you know, and it is quite interesting because we come very much now to the focus on what is going the future of the global future, the world, China and the United States of America. So it's quite interesting.
It is very interesting, and we'll keep across it. Next to the breaking news that came through late Thursday evening at the effective banishment of Prince Andrew, now Andrew, an astonishing statement from Buckingham Palace 2 weeks since the King's brother agreed to give up the title of Duke. Now, the statement from King Charles and the Buckingham Palace, not released on its own X account, sent to selected media, announcing Andrew's been stripped of the title he was born with, that of a prince, ordered to leave his 30-roomed mansion, Royal Lodge at Windsor, effective immediately. We're since hearing that it might be delayed, but he is on his way out and into Sandringham under the cost in lodgings of King Charles. Now, it all comes in light of the latest in a constant stream of scandals surrounding him. Further pressure on the royals to act because of the posthumous release of a memoir by Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent of the victims of the disgraced billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, Andrew's former friend. Now, in Nobody's Girl, she detailed 3 occasions where she claimed to have been trafficked to have sex with Andrew. She described it as rape. He denied the allegations. The palace statement, in ridding themselves of his connection to royalty, says it acknowledges, quote, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations, the statement concludes, Their Majesties make clear the thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and remain with the victims of all forms of abuse. Now, Emma Cates, this story is a victory of sorts for the family, talking about how they've managed to down a prince, and she would be happy, said a brother, if she were watching Down on Events right now. What's your reading of events?
Well, evidently, it's a huge contrast with the United States, where the Epstein files, everyone speaks about them, they haven't been released, and no one's been held to account. And there's many people, including Donald Trump, around him who are rumoured to be in those files. But here we see a prince being deprinced. It's really an annus horribilis for King Charles, right? I mean, his mother lived through what was her horrible year during the whole scandal around Princess Diana when she died, how she was harassed by the royal family. But at least, at the very least, finally they have acted. However, as we reported in the New World, and you can read it, a great piece by Clive Irving, how did the House of Windsor allow this to happen or let Andrew happen? He should have lost his title much earlier, because these are not new allegations. But King Charles were too focused on making money. Duchy of Cornwall, fixing up their tax situation. They're worth $28 billion, the royals these days, much more than when Queen Elizabeth was around. And so, according to Clive Irving, and read the article, this is like a focus point, an obsession of King Charles that he's been focused on, and he took his eye off the ball. And so, belatedly, he's acted quite brutally towards his brother. But it's high time, and you can see that Charles has been heckled, which is completely unprecedented in public, heckled by British citizens who are calling out to him saying, what did you know about Andrew and Epstein and the rape claims? And so, I mean, he had to act. So it's a real crisis for the monarchy. But I did notice that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, will not remove Andrew from the line of succession. So there's a kind of, I saw that in the Telegraph. I was wondering, does the Telegraph want that to happen?
It's a curiosity, because how do you no longer have any royal title, and yet if something were to happen 7 times over, you would be king?
Sure, we need more information, and transparency is really not what the royal family is famous for.
And that hits the point, Cyril, that Andrew Lowney, the biographer, who spent 4 years investigating the life, the profile, speaking to the bosses of his Falklands commander, those around Andrew, those around Sarah Ferguson, trying to get to the crux of not just what was happening with Virginia Giuffre and Epstein, but also financial allegations, how he got that money. Alleged spying with China and those around him, his dealings there. Mm-hmm. What do you make of, when you're looking at this from here, the fact that it happened now? What do you see as the key factors? This book?
But even if I'm talking from here, Paris, you said the pronounce the word curiosity. For us, it's always a curiosity to have this strange thing that we just cut short a few centuries ago. But apart from the joke, yeah, there were a lot of suspicions from coming out from the Andrew, and it looks very much. I mean, from our perspective here, from what we see, I just remind that the press in France doesn't really much talk about Andrew, the tabloid, very much, because there is a sense of fascination about. I remind that in 1996, Lady Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. So there is this link, but there were too many stories around this Prince Andrew, who is known in France for being extremely close to the Queen Mother. She really cherished him, but it looks very much that. At last and at least, the royal family, for his own survival, is taking his distance with some we call brebis galeuses, from mouton noir, the black sheep, if you say what I mean.
Yes, and the royals have issues with
at last.
Yeah, they're spares and not the heirs. We've had issues with Prince Harry as well. Now, to your point, those 2 dates, 97 of the death of Diana, 92, Emma Kate mentioned the annus horribilis, which you saw 3 divorces, including Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, a fire at Windsor. There are analysts saying this is worse. How is it playing out in Germany? How is it being covered there? Is there a big interest in this?
Not as much as in Britain, obviously, but I haven't seen that many articles, apart from the tabloid press, either. I think it's not, like, the British monarchy is in itself nothing that is widely discussed in Germany, I would say. But of course, I mean, if something like that happens, it is a subject. But then again, judging from what I believe to understand of all this is it ain't over till it's over, because there's probable or possible criminal investigations that might be started against Prince Andrew because he is suspected to have told someone to gather compromising material against Virginia Giuffre to actually drop her accusations against him. So we might actually see this backfire still for some time, even if the royal family has obviously tried to pull the emergency brake quite far down the line.
If we look at one thing with Andrew that I think there's going to be a lot more focus on, I know everybody talks about that car crash interview, Emma Case, of the 2019 Newsnight interview where he talks about never sweating, going to Pizza Express in Woking, saying he did the honourable thing, that he went in 2010 to say to Jeffrey Epstein, that's it, and said, my weakness is I'm honourable. Then it emerged in the last few weeks in the newspapers that a year later he was still in touch with him, talking about playing together again. Does that cast a light on that whole interview? And I wonder if, to the extent of, once you say one thing that's economical with the truce, what else is wrong too?
Yeah, I mean, it's very revealing. It's so sordid. There's clearly so much dishonesty and duplicity here. And also I saw how, he basically showed no contrition. He and the royal family, including the king, have been forced into this situation, and also political pressure has been brought to bear on them. You know, we just saw the front page of the newspapers saying that the government had pressured for him to resign. I mean, but why was he given this enormous mansion to live in? All this money? Why did he keep his title for so long? So, I mean, I think that this is not the end of this. It's just the beginning of the story, and it will have repercussions across the Atlantic in Washington, I'm sure, and in New York.
It's a very good point, because if you look at Cyril in the UK, you've had two big kind of downfalls recently with kind of touching or relations. I should say, with Epstein to some degree. We saw Peter Mandelstam, the UK ambassador to the US, lose his job, forced to resign. Now Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew. We're not seeing anything to the same extent on the other side of the Atlantic.
Not very much. You're right. So are they? I don't know what you put in perspective with this, but yeah, of course, no, we don't see it.
I also wonder where.
So it's a cover-up. I mean, that's what even Republicans are calling it, a cover-up. And the Republican Party people around Donald Trump who are stopping. I mean, Mike Johnson, who's the head of the Republicans, he's refusing to swear in a newly elected Democrat because she could vote to force the release of the Epstein files. And Elon Musk told us that Donald Trump is in those files, but maybe Bill Clinton is too, but we need to see them. And then we can see what happened. But clearly, I mean, Michael Wolff has written about this, and now he's being sued by Melania Trump, the journalist. But Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were best buddies for a long time. So, I mean, if Prince Andrew is going down, will it really finally touch Donald Trump, or will it just stay an issue for the British monarchy and on the other side of the Atlantic?
Well, he continues to say this alleged birthday drawing of a naked woman with signed off was false, fake news. However, it's kind of split the MAGA movement. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for big, this is a conspiracy, this needs to be looked at. That's causing internal problems. Steve Bannon's getting involved as well.
Yes, it's interesting. Steve Bannon, who says that, Trump should have a third term, and who apparently doesn't speak to Trump anymore. But yes, a small portion of the MAGA movement is still focused on the Epstein files. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a crazed conspiracy theorist. We've written about her at Conspiracy Watch. But on the Epstein files, she's quite sound. She supported the victims. They did a big press conference where Donald Trump did a flyover to try and stop them from speaking outside the Capitol a few months back, 6 weeks ago. But yes, I mean, let's see. There's a groundswell, and also in the Republican Party, for this to come to some kind of end. But for the moment, they've got the grip, and those files are not coming out.
Technically, as an Australian, he's your king. Within the Commonwealth. Can I ask whether you think what it's done to the brand of the royal family, and have they done enough now to move away from it?
Oh no, once again, it's just another a terrible blow to the concept of monarchy, but particularly for us as Australians, and I confess I am in favour of an Australian republic like many Australians, much as affection as we do have for Great Britain, but basically this is a foreign monarchy, and I mean we can't choose it. It's already hereditary, so that's an issue. But for Australians, certainly, I mean, King Charles has been to Australia. He's not been well. He visited. He's relatively respected, but not like his mother. And I don't think this will help his cause at all in Australia. But Australians have been relatively slow off the mark to actually go for another referendum, which we would have to have in order to become a republic rather than a constitutional monarchy, which we still are. He is the King of Australia.
Thank you, all of you. Fantastic panel, clarity, insights tonight. Emma Kate Simmons, writer, editor at Franc-Tireur and at New World magazine. Thank you. Caroline Diller, Paris correspondent for the German broadcaster ARD Radio. Cyril Payen, France 24's senior international correspondent. Hopefully, some stage off to Gaza. All being well, we will see. Thank you to all the panellists and a unique, fascinating insight on this Halloween night where it seems appropriate to end on ghosts. To quote Shakespeare's Richard II, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings, how some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have disposed. Well, from talk of princes, kings and pharaohs this weekend, after 20 years of preparation and delay, the biggest archaeology museum in the world opens. The Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Visitors will be met with the size of a huge statue of Ramses II, aka Ozymandias. So from Shakespeare to Shelley, we'll leave you with the image of Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in 7 days for The World next week.